Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, much better. We've had such great speakers this morning already, fantastic content, but it still feels to me a little bit stiff. I think maybe we need a couple of UJ students in here to inject some energy. Yes, there we go. It is an absolute pleasure to be co-moderating today. Is this thing working? Testing, 1, 2, yes it is. With Augustine. I've now been doing this for the 3rd year. I think at some point we'll have to retire me. And it is fascinating because every year there are 3 themes that we have been focusing on, and I'm not sure whether we have behavioral change, which is the ultimate success criteria by which to judge systemic change in society. I remember 3 years ago in this exact venue when we were talking about water insecurity, food insecurity, energy insecurity. We had all the big players in the room that are critical to the entire value chain around water, energy, and food. Last year, we focused on disruptive stories, and we centered young leaders in particular who are doing amazing things to ask what works and why do stories that work, and what might we be able to scale up by listening to some incredible young South African entrepreneurs. And this year, in a sense, is no different. We are coming at the same challenge, but posing a different question of mindset and behavior around wastage. And I think it's a very important conversation that we need to have. And what I'm looking forward to for the rest of this morning, up to lunch and during the breaks that we will have, conversations that will also happen digitally today and in the week or 2 after the conference, as happens every year, which is why we encourage you to tweet. And we've made it, by the way. We are trending, obviously, important things in life. But what I'm hoping is that we can have an honest conversation. We're going to tell stories. We will challenge each other. But also that we will listen very closely to one another. I've had a couple of conversations leading up to the conference with Augustine. I'm just reflecting on my own behavior, for example. And it's amazing because you may recall 3 years ago, you see you have institutional memory if you become old, we were talking about our own habits when it comes to wastage in terms of food in our households. And I'm one of those people who, now that I live in the suburbs, think I can get rid of my Woolies food as soon as it says it's the expiry date. Little did I know until I came to this conference 3 years ago that there's an entire capitalist logic built into making Eusebius feel scared to eat his food after the expiry date has gone off. So there are 2 levels of conversation we need to have today. The one is systemic, but the other is also deeply personal. And I'm hoping that we will be self-examining as we talk about wastage in relation to water, food, and energy. Because in a sense, as with many national conversations in our country, it's easier to have conversations about the system out there, which is not unimportant. It's not unimportant. But I think it's equally important that we point the finger at our individual selves and ask, what are you doing? What do you do when you get to Virgin Active and it says, take a 2-minute shower? Or are you like me who go, okay, how you know, Vase, I'll have a 3-minute shower then. What are you actually doing in terms of your own agency at work to also walk the talk rather than simply speaking at a systemic level about what society out there needs to be doing? So I'm hoping we can combine these conversations, a high-level conversation, but also a deeply personal one about our behavior. Now, to kick us off, I'm going to introduce our very first speaker, who's absolutely amazing. Kholosa Magudu is in charge as the WWF person who is working in a very fascinating project that I've heard about now for a while, and I'm looking forward to learning how it has impacted her on a very personal level in the Breede River area. And Kerry this morning was stressing the importance of not, in a sense, anthropologizing communities, but empowering communities to genuinely be interlocutors as we look for solutions. And I think what you're going to hear in Kholosa's story, and I'm not going to tell more beyond this, is precisely someone who takes seriously empowering the communities to be at the center of behavioral change, rather than actually just looking down from a podium and coming with solutions into communities without having a bottom-up approach at the same time, even as we think about systems as experts. Can we please put our hands together and give her a warm round of applause and welcome her to the conference?
I would like us all to throw back to our favorite childhood memories and think of that one memory that you really, really want back. For me, that is my childhood experience of water. I grew up in rural Matatiele in the Eastern Cape, in the foothills of the Drakensberg Mountains. And those were the days I really, really enjoyed the river. Although I was often mistaken for a little boy, I still went on to sit on the riverbank, making clay toys and making clay pots. I went skinny dipping. I went rock hopping. I danced in the rain. And of course, as I grew a bit older, I started fetching water and balancing the bucket on my head. Little did I know then that I was growing up in one of the wealthiest places in Mzansi. I was growing up in a water source area. Yes, a water source area. I'm sharing this because maybe you're asking yourself, what the fun is a water source area? Well, water source areas are mountain areas that provide half of the water we find flowing in our rivers and into our dams. The special thing about them is that they only constitute 8% of the total land of South Africa. I think that is amazing. Had I known this earlier, I would have probably respected the river maybe a little bit more, But fast forward to the present. Here we are. Here I am. I am now living in Cape Town. And yet again, I'm living in another water source area. The only difference is I've forgotten about the stress of fetching water with the buckets. I've forgotten about the queues in the communal taps. I've now upgraded. I've upgraded to showers and indoor taps, to geysers, you name it. But what I'm learning is that with this upgrade to the city, I've actually downgraded to wasteful thinking. And I've realized that even people around me are leading wasteful lifestyles. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm one of those people. And maybe this morning we should start rethinking our usage. I think it comes with being in the city, You get such easy access to taps. And then you disconnect to the water source area. You disconnect to the river. Why should we care? I think we should care because we are not the throwaway generation. We are the turn-around generation. And since we are the turn-around generation, this means we want to turn waste on its head. We want to start future-proofing South Africa by waterproofing. Forgive me if I sound like I'm preaching, but I just get emotional when it comes to this topic. And I'd like to bring you guys to the attention of future-proofing. What do I mean by future-proofing? Future-proofing is like building a house. Waterproofing is making sure that house has a solid foundation and the roof does not leak. We are the turnaround generation because we are solutions-driven. We have technology on our fingertips, and social media is like our uncle's house. It connects us to the world. We should start thinking about the solutions, and it should begin today. Well, you would propose that technology is one solution that could solve all our water issues. I beg to differ. This is because it might take us a long time and it might require more resources for us to actually get running with the technology. I am proposing a mindset change, And where I saw this mindset change at work is in series, in the communities of Nduli and Prince Alfred Hamlets, where I work with the WWF. Those communities are making a difference on the ground. An example is that they actually report water leaks. They report leaking pipes to the municipality on behalf of the community. And I've been so inspired by this community that I now see water as wealth through their eyes, because they're just a fruit farming community, but they understand that polluted water poses a threat to their jobs and their economy, and they are doing as much as they can to protect it. What can we do in this room? Changing your mindset is very cheap. You don't have to wait for Black Friday. You don't have to go to your nearest spaza shop. You just have to start doing things differently. How I'm contributing to my future-proofing, to my bit of future-proofing, is that I'm using less water. I take the same bucket that I used to place on my head, and I put it in the shower, where I catch the shower water to actually wash the floors and flush. And one other easy thing you can do, take your singing in the shower elsewhere. It really helped my relationship with my flatmate, and it reduced my water bill. So I went back and I unsubscribed to my wasteful tendencies. Won't you just, Pavs, think about deactivating your wastegram? Maybe join our next journey of water and find out on your impacts. Maybe make that turnaround call to the municipality and report a leak. Maybe start taking your struggles and making them central to water, because water is central to everything. Think about Fees Must Fall. What if it were successful? Where would you get quality education without water? What would that mean? If you were to get some land, what would the productivity of that land be without water? I urge you all to make a bucket list. And in your bucket list, put this in bold letters. We need to start creating a future-proof South Africa. And while we are doing that, we have to make sure that it is waterproof. Thank you. I would now like to actually introduce the next speaker. Her name is Sisi Matela. She hails all the way from Matatiele. She's like a mother to me. She mentored me, gave me an internship opportunity while I was still studying. She loves cattle. She loves mountains. And she is a co-founder of Environmental and Rural Solutions in Matatiele. And she will be telling us about the work they do that WWF is supporting in restoring livelihoods to restore landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sisi Matela.
Thank you, ke a leboha bomme le bontate. As Kholosa said, I come from Matatiele in the southern Drakensberg Mountains. We are sometimes in KwaZulu-Natal, sometimes in Eastern Cape. Our nearest neighbor is Lesotho. And on the other side, we are neighbored by the Afrikaner farming community. So we epitomize the central concept of a South African. I think I would like you to keep in mind this photo that is on the screen right now. because you'll have a good appreciation of what we, people that live in the upper catchment, still enjoy, while we recognize the responsibility that we have to the rest of South Africa. So it's a privilege to live in the upper catchment, but it's also a big responsibility because we are custodians of the water resources for this nation. Where do I press? Oh, there. We are fortunate that most years we still get the snow that yields the cleanest water that you can find anywhere in this nation. And you will also hear, when we were growing up, and even now people will say, when is the snow coming? When is the snow coming? Because we know that if we have had the snow, we are going to have water, clean water longer. Technology. Okay. Okay. In Matatiele, we have the most extensive wetland system that you can find anywhere in South Africa. At different levels of degradation, of course, from the best to some of the worst. But we also recognize that it is our responsibility to restore these landscapes, to make sure that they yield clean water for this nation. I think somebody should press this thing. Okay. We don't just think of our mountains as a water resource, just for water resources, but we also get people to come and enjoy our mountains. Move. We are also privileged to have a lot of the rivers originating from the Drakensberg Mountains. We have the Tugela, we have the Great Umzimvubu, we have the Orange River that originates on the Lesotho side of the mountains. We have the Great Umzimkhulu River. But the one that I'm closely related to is the Great Umzimvubu River, which fortunately up until now is the only free-flowing river in South Africa. And if we could, we would keep it that way. The Orange River in Lesotho looks like a cesspool, but it gathers strength as it goes to the ocean because it has a long way to go. Yes, it's not called the Orange for nothing. It is a really orange. And when you grow up in the rural areas, you have to get water as a little girl. The little girls are responsible for fetching water for the family. Fortunately, now we have tap stands, that the RDP water that we are really thankful for. But traditionally, we didn't have that. When I was growing up, we had to go and fetch water in buckets. The next slide. We had to fetch the water in buckets. And it was nice because traditionally, that's where boys used to meet girls, at the spring. That's why most of our children don't get married now, because they're not going to the spring anymore to get water. We have to find an alternative because they still need to do it. They also have to go and fetch wood and make the fires for their family. These days, fortunately, our government is supplying water to most of the rural households. And there are very long pipelines that go through the landscapes because water is no longer available locally. So most of these pipelines pass through a lot of villages, and a lot of them get breached even before the water reaches its destination. All of us have to have some respect for water, because water is life. But at the same time, water can be extremely disruptive and destructive. And people are not paying attention to this. We have a lot of infrastructure that has been destroyed by water in our area. And people will tell you that we have these high-intensity storms now. But unfortunately, our government is still not designing infrastructure to the specifics that will make sure that they accommodate these high-intensity storms. There's just no money to do it. At the same time, we also have, we still have a lot of snow that will disrupt travel, but while supplying the water. We love the snow. We have a lot of people coming and visiting us because there aren't too many places in South Africa where you still get that much snow. But at the same time, like we said, we have this, the summers are extremely hot. We have a lot of wildfires that are desiccating our landscapes, while at the same time, we are carrying on with life, with our livestock, with our communities. It is very important that when we work with the communities, we make sure that government, the rural communities, and especially the leadership that is known by the communities, work together to make sure that whatever interventions are put in the communities are respected, they are well understood. Unfortunately, most people still don't understand the laws. They understand the laws that are in the 10 Commandments, do not kill and do not steal. But the rest, the Water Act, the Environmental Act, and so on, people don't understand it because they are all written in English, and we don't know where we are going to go with them. We have a lot of disruption of the wetland systems that I'm telling you about because people don't understand their functions. They are dredging the wetlands in order to expose land for cultivation. It is our duty to educate them about the importance of keeping these wetlands intact because that's where we get our water, that's where we get our livelihood. I think one of the strategies that we have adopted in the upper catchment, because for us it's not about wasting water. For us, our responsibility is to make sure that the water is available to everybody around the nation. So we are finding ways, innovative ways of restoring the upper catchment to make sure that it continues to yield the necessary water resources for the people of South Africa. So what we are doing, we are working with the local communities. We started programs that we named Restoring Livelihoods to Restore Landscapes. Because we found out that if you talk conservation, and you're not involving the local communities effectively, and they're not benefiting directly, they're not going to participate. They love their animals, they love their fields. So what we are doing, we are working with them to graze their livestock properly. And I can tell you, we started with 2 communities in 2012. We are now into 21 communities where they are practicing the traditional rotational grazing systems, and they are making a lot of money and restoring those landscapes. They are also engaging in the citizen science programs where they are responsible for monitoring the recovery of the resources. We have the splashboard, they measure what hojas are coming back to the streams, and they are very proud. They will tell you that now that the grass is growing, the moisture is staying in the ground for longer, our cattle are getting fat, and the way they measure how fat their cattle are, they'll tell you the cow patties are so much bigger than they used to be, which thing you wouldn't think about if you are doing pure science. And they are doing all of that, and they are giving us the data so that we can build on their successes. I can tell you, in the auctions that we have been holding with the communities where they are selling their non-productive livestock so far, they have made close to 20 million. And now they don't see a reason to go to Gauteng and go mining anymore. And the one big disruption that we are faced with is the exploration of the shale gas in that landscape that I showed you right at the beginning. I think it's sacrilegious for somebody to even think of going there and destroying that landscape so that they can find shale gas. It's shameful. You can go to the landscapes. Go and explore alternatively on the landscapes that have already been degraded, that have not been restored. Don't go and destroy other landscapes. Fortunately, we have been coming up with these alternatives where people are making livelihood from their land. And it's the people that are saying, absolutely no mining here. So it's much more effective. And I got a message this morning that PASA has withdrawn one of their applications. So we wish for them to withdraw all of their applications in our area, and we'll be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we please put our hands together? And I have a wonderful earworm now, Sissy, because of your presentation. Meet me at the river. It's going to be in my head the whole day. Okay, so this is where the important work starts. I'm going to recognize you because I'm not Baleka Mbete. So it's a democratic space. Everyone can speak. I want us to share stories, ask questions, challenge each other. Be also self-examining in your remarks about your own behavior. And as I said a little bit earlier, it is a conversation I want us to have at multiple levels. At the systemic, but also at the deeply personal, what you're doing within your own sphere of influence. My only request, and I make it at every conference where I do this kind of work, and every time I fail, Augustine, is that you are un-South African and you keep it pithy, unless you are the world's most amazing storyteller, so that everyone can get a chance. We have about 20 minutes or so. Okay, we've got some roving mics. If anyone would like to kick us off, I will recognize you. Yes, ma'am. Okay, can we get a mic there to the front, please? In the meantime, I'll toss out some questions. There's a lot of young people here. We love that because you are the future. I thought one of the most important moments in Kholosa's talk was connecting fees must fall to water insecurity. And I'd love to know from the young people, I wish we had many SRC lead and fallists in the room, if you self-identify as such, have you made that connection between the politics of fallism and water insecurity? Did you see that connection? Was there a light bulb moment, or are you still pausing over what she was talking about?
Regard to Pravin Gordon had to say earlier about finding a new solidarity needed for South Africa to tackle these problems. So I got you this morning and I thought, okay, we're at the Maslow Hotel. And it struck me that this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and here we are at this conference talking about the planet. And so then I thought further along the lines that in and of itself, the planet has got its own destiny. But we, as the humans on this planet, need all of the processes that this planet provides for our existence. Then I thought further, all these great motivational speakers like Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki, when they talk about figuring out why you want to be successful, they always ask you to identify your why. Get your why right, and that'll inform your rest of your decisions. And so then I thought, to tackle all of this wastage and to tackle the numerous problems that we've got, we really need an overarching why are we doing it? And it really comes down to, we need the planet. The planet doesn't need us, quite frankly. So if we can ask those questions, and if the why can inform our solutions, I think we can do something great.
Great stuff. Anyone else? Yes, can we get a mic here?
I've got a mic here ready.
Okay, who's got the mic?
My name's Steve Johnson. I work with
there
a
you are,
company
Steve.
called
How's it?
Chemonics that works in the area of environment, conservation and development. I've been working with a group of people recently who have been attempting to get our literal wastewater in our whole Johannesburg, Pretoria catchment area better managed in terms of the flows out of these upper areas here in these high catchment areas as they move through the sanitation ponds and out into the Hartbeespoort Dam and below. And they are using and introducing microbes that they will introduce into the water so that it's pre-digested before they get to the sanitation ponds. They're finding major complications in getting through to the municipalities who see this as some kind of threat and have resisted the introduction of this, with the result that the trihalomethanes that are coming out below Hartbeespoort Dam are hugely, hugely above acceptable standards. And so, yes, there are solutions, but political will is lacking at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can we get a mic here to the front? And in the meantime, can we get one to the other aisle? And if you want to respond to something that someone has said, please do so as well. I mean, we've had two very important questions around political will, and I wonder whether everyone shares the agreement that political will is lacking, and what is the size of the problem if political will is one of the drivers of wastage in our country. But also the why question. I still struggle to get myself, my colleagues, my listeners in my media platforms to understand that politics is not just about personalities, that it is fundamentally about a sustainable environment. We haven't made those connections, which is why the 3-minute video, well, 1.5-minute video that we started off with, for me, was so incisive, because we can't even assume that we have a shared understanding of the nature and the scope and the urgency of the problem. So please feel free to also engage the questions that are being raised, in addition to telling your own stories.
So I'm Catherine, and I think it's a great point of departure. I'm an economist, and economists are exhausting because they've missed the ecosystem part of their training. And I've had the good fortune to travel around South Africa in a period of decline and degradation, but also to try and count rivers. And up the N7 in the Northern Cape, I was like, is this a drought? Is this what it's usually like? There are signposts for rivers. But what I wanted to ask is that there's an awareness that's cultivated and then an actual change in action. And I do think there's a difference in curriculum in terms of what you're taught. But I wanted to say, my cousin in Mitchell's Plain doesn't pay the bills for water. She came to our house, and my dad used to work in water and waste and got a clap, right? Because she used all the water for everyone in the household, but it wasn't clear what determines your awareness of scarcity, especially if you're from an environment of scarcity. To contrast that with a story where UCT academics were looking to advise the city of Cape Town in terms of electricity policy. They looked at households and installed prepaid meters. And this girl really didn't intend the offense that she induced, but she was like, oh, well, these people are terrible at managing their money. They're run out of electricity very early on in the month. Maybe they're just sitting there in the dark for the rest of it. It was like, I live on that road, and the city is a client where they care about the number of fires they put out. So when you're advising them about how to price, you really want to think about fuels, not just in terms of electricity, but candles and paraffin. And that consciousness and how you create it is really what I have a question about, because we can't all go on a trot to audit the country's water resources all the time.
Catherine, right? I know you, don't I?
Debating.
Yes, from debating, from university. Yeah. Can I throw that back at you before I come here to the front?
Sure.
And being a debater, I know you can think on your feet.
Sure.
What is the answer to your own question? If we go into communities where deprivation is already the norm, how do we get those communities to not feel like they are just the subjects of policy from above, but also that they themselves see the connections between, well, I don't know where Scufton's going to come from tomorrow, what's going to be in my lunchbox. At the same time, I also need to take water, energy, and food insecurity seriously and my own wastage. How do we do? Answer your own question, because you've clearly thought about it.
Yeah, I've thought about it a a lot, and I think it starts with listening, right? So for me, I was writing down indicator cow patty, because I work in monitoring and evaluation, and I have to sometimes design a survey, and I'm sure as hell not thinking in cow patties, right? So the other thing is sometimes you really have to tell people that their perception is distorted. In Cape Town in particular, there's a hell of a lot of water, but you can't drink it, right? So with my cousin, I was like, what are you thinking about? How are you engaging with your environment in a conscious manner, but not in a preachy way? I was like, go swim if you want a scrub, right? But drinking water's still got to come from somewhere. And I think it's the manner in which you engage, which is discursive, but also like, I need to come and realize your context is one in which you're doing the best you can so that we can build a forged, like, shared, I don't want to use understanding because that's not enough, but like active means of engagement and behavioral change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Sure.
very much. Okay, we're going to come to the front. Just a little request in the spirit of just looking each other in the eye, having an honest conversation, unless you're really shy. Please just kindly stand up and then so we can see you and then we can engage. Also feel free to tweet your thoughts, I'm multitasking here. I'm not paying attention, so I'm going to pick up comments here as well. I know not everyone likes to speak in a big venue, which is perfectly fine. And if you could kindly introduce yourself, it will make the former minister most happy.
Okay, now you say we need to stand up. I didn't want to stand up in this bright
Agent
orange
Orange.
suit. Okay, my name's Shakima Wainer. I'm a social environmental awareness documentarian. And I would just like to give out a shout out to the women in the world, because I work with incredible women. Even today with Kholosa and Sisi, I worked with a group of women in the Himalayas, in the Green Himalayas, which at the moment when I was there, experienced incredible drought. We are we in South Africa are so lucky. We can't even imagine. I needed to do a documentary in the Himalayas, and my documentary, which I was supposed to track, was reduced to a 3-kilometer radius because there was no water. It was unreal, and the women there are incredible, and the children, it's just amazing. We must listen to our children because they can tell us what we need in this world. They really can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I recognize some more hands? Yes, so you've had your hand up for a while, my apologies. Can we quickly get the mic there?
My name is Temba Kamfu, and the reason why I want to say something is because I got touched by the ladies from Matatiele, the stories that they related about the importance of taking care of nature. Being a person who grew up in a rural area, I also had similar experiences, and it's very sad when you see people being careless. It takes you to that level where Kholosa says she gets emotional. And I think in most instances this happens because people are uninformed. And I think it also follows up on the initial discussion between the lady from the Northern Cape about how do we solve these issues. You need to go down to their levels, go to the villages, go to the townships, look at the sources of energy that they're using, the wood, the coal and everything, help them to transition to better means of reducing their carbon footprints. Walk the streets, see the filth, see the levels of sanitation that they are exposed to, and ask yourself, would someone like that really care what's happening in the ocean when they're living in very stressful situations? So we need to actually be designing sustainable solutions which speak to diverse kind of situations and really galvanize and get involved as the entire country to find those solutions that will launch South Africa to become a better country. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a mic here while we're waiting for the mic, Augustine? A couple of questions. Put up your hand for me. How many people in this room collect their shower or bath water and use it for a different purpose? Wow. Of those people who have their hands up, keep them up. Okay? If you're not from Cape Town, take your hand down. Literally 90% of you from Cape Town. Okay, so you guys are both saving while benting as well. Okay, we see you. Okay, that's absolutely fascinating. How many people here consciously on a daily basis, when you brush your teeth, make sure that the tap is not running while you're brushing? Okay, a little bit better.
Your hand is down.
Well spotted.
So thanks. So just in response to that comment, I think what we find in the conservation sector and when we're working with communities is that often we also have to be careful of the delusion that we're going to go and help them. And I think we all have to be very careful of that. Often a lot of the innovation lies in the communities. So I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with Sisi last night and with Kholosa. And what's very interesting and fascinating about the Matatiele example is that community solved their own problem. They figured out, the chiefs themselves figured out that their livelihoods and the economy, the local rural economy that they've created is solving the problem. And then it dealt with fracking on its own. It didn't require anybody else to deal with it. A couple of leaders that were injected into that community, but they solved the problem. And that's the type of thinking that we're looking at, is that within these wasteful systems, how do the leaders themselves stand up and recognize that there's a greater efficiency that can be achieved if you just think about these things a little bit differently?
Okay, thanks, Augustine. Can we get one to the front, please?
Thank you so much. I'd like to pose a question to all of us in the room. Do we think the drought issue is a Cape Town or Western Cape issue? And if it's not, who of us here can proudly say that they've started thinking differently about drought? Because I've seen my lobola dying, I'm not impressed. So. Could you just please share, maybe even it's on social media, of how we are making a difference in terms of the drought? I would actually like to see more input from Gauteng, because I know out of the 9 provinces, it was the one that escaped being declared a disaster zone last year. All the others were declared disaster areas because of the drought. So if you are from Gauteng and you are doing something to change, to actually be proactive about the drought, please share. Thank you.
Thanks, Kholosa, for that provocation. I think it's very important. I mean, it's crazy that in 2016, 8 out of the 9 provinces have been declared disaster regions, and yet despite that, this is not national conversation. You're more likely to find Kulubuse on the front page of the Star than a conversation about the urgency with which we need to tackle the drought. And I recently attended an event in Cape Town where I must say I was incredibly pleased. Politicians often get it wrong, but some also get it right. And I was enormously moved by an articulation without slides. She has internalized the knowledge from the mayor of Cape Town, who said that it has to be business unusual, and the municipalities as city economies must take ownership of thinking through drought in Cape Town, but this applies to the rest of the country as well, as no longer seasonal. No longer seasonal. And then what are the implications of that from the point of view of innovation and partnerships between all of us as stakeholders, business, labor, our community, civil society, and the municipalities. And I think that is absolutely spot on. And I think it's an awkward conversation. I was hoping, I don't know how many people from the state, bureaucrats are in the room to rise to the challenge of the question at the back about political will. Here's another stat that flabbergasted me when I got it from my now colleagues at WWF, that something like about 35% of water at municipal level is lost due to leakage. So just at the level of infrastructure and maintenance, where are the budgets? Where's the skill set? I mean, from a technocratic point of view, that is criminal. There's a lot that we can do, but that partly depends on externalities when it comes to global warming, in terms of the overall patterns of weather patterns in the world. But it seems to me the one thing that is fully within our control is the quality of men and women that you have who are in charge of basic infrastructure at a city level, for example. 35% of water lost due to leakage in a context where 8 out of 9 provinces are experiencing drought. I mean, where's the political accountability? So If you are a bureaucrat, now is the time to not hide under the table and put up your hand as well. Okay, let's take, I think we've got time for maybe one or two short little interventions, and then we'll move on to our next part of the program. Who's got the mic? Yes, sir.
So my name is Bumbonim Simango. I'm a student at the University of Venda. And let me just say that initially the plan was not to go there. I didn't want to go there. My friends were going to the Cape, they were going to KZN, Joburg. I was like, I also want to go there. But it actually helped me. It exposed me to the reality that confronts these rural areas. And I'm very grateful for the presentation that we just had, because it raised a very, I think, pivotal point, and that is that indigenous knowledge systems on their own play a very, very influential role, or host the capacity to play a fundamental role in conservation at large. Because even if you look at it from a historic perspectives, the things that they used to practice, be it farming, be it water harvesting, all these practices, they were very conservative in their own nature. And we are currently living in a time where everything is becoming modernized. And as we do that, we're losing all these fundamental values that they have retained over the years and which have proved to be very, very helpful. Now, additionally, and this is, I hope Dr. Singh can respond to this one. I'm currently working on creating a young women in science and leadership movement at the University of Venda. Because I feel that, again, just looking at these rural areas, young women are the ones who are actively involved in most of the domestic work that takes place. They harvest water, they plow the fields, and all that type of all those types of activities. Now, to Dr. Singh, for young women in these areas who are still, you know, who still operate within the line of thought of just, you know, doing domestic work, not really focused on exploring the sciences and all that, how do we get them excited about the sciences? How do we get them to be active participants in the sciences, in you know, economics, in this vast field of studies and whatnot? So that's what I'd like to get a response for or towards. Thank you.
Okay, can we get a mic here to Dr. Singh? Do you want to respond? Or just jump up? Any excuse to hear from you again. You were absolutely fabulous.
So I think we need to do this by helping cement. People in rural areas already have strong connections with nature, but taking that forward to showcase what women can do in science. And I have a group of women under a project called Women in Motion, with the motion being the ocean. And many of these come from rural communities, and they are champions in ocean conservation. And I think they are good role models. You know, water is everywhere, and, well, not everywhere, but we all recognize the importance of water, and water is central in everyone's life. And all water goes to the ocean. So for me, it's about making those links very clear and building, in my case, ocean literacy, which is understanding what the ocean does for you and what your impact on the ocean is. And it's in that way, through tools like the Sassy Pocket Card, which then became the app, that just make it easy for people to make a difference. And we need to do more of that. And then in terms of science, we need to strengthen science in rural communities. I mean, I taught maths in the Sodwana Bay Preparatory. Science, maths, and work with women to do that.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for your contributions. I'm not going to try and pull them together. Salim is very hard at work there because he's going to have the synoptic challenge later to pull all the threads together. But the issues that have been raised from a policy level to our own behavior, your level of knowledge about the extent of the challenge, I think have all been absolutely invaluable. And obviously, we will have multiple conversations on multiple platforms, so continue to tweet. And look, for that matter, even once we have ended convening here today, the conversation should continue. Alexis, for example, asks on Twitter, or makes the following comment that I think is chillingly true, I'm afraid. Government public participation exercises are show and tell. We need to change how we do this. I think that's absolutely true. We churn out policy papers in this country as often as we have braais, and we don't often actually see them through, and the same comes with public participation processes. It's a key part of the legislative process, policy formation processes, but very often communities are objects of public policy rather than the co-creators of them.